It's America at Night with Rich Valdes.
All right, America, welcome back. Rich Valdes, keeping you company all night long. And right now, I'm always happy to bring her on the show. We usually talk to her via telephone because she's in Jerusalem. Today, she's in New York City, former advisor in the office of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and senior editor at JNS. And she's also a podcast host. Ruthie Blum, welcome back.
Thank you for having me, Rich.
You bet. So there's always so much to talk about. It seems like every day, I don't know, you give it half a day, 3 hours, 4 hours, and there's a new story on what Iran is doing to destroy Israel, to try to get more nuclear uranium enrichment to come at the United States. Who can they fund in their latest proxy war? And I want to get your assessment. You're on the ground in Jerusalem. What's the latest?
Well, the latest is that Israel is very concerned about these negotiations between the Trump administration and the Ayatollahs. That's what I like to say, because it's not Iran. Mm-hmm. It's not the Iranian people.
Right.
It's this awful regime, very, very dangerous. Now, President Trump definitely understands that, and that is why he is saying no nukes and no uranium enrichment. The trouble is, and I believe that Prime Minister Netanyahu thinks this, though he doesn't say it. I'm saying this as me now.
Yeah.
That there is no such thing as a good deal, because even when, if and when Iran ever agrees to anything, it violates it. So it's not worth anything if it agrees. But in the meantime, it's been stalling, because every minute that nothing is happening and Israel isn't attacking its facilities, it has time to bury them deeper. We've had intelligence reports that that's sort of what's going on. But having said that, obviously Prime Minister Netanyahu is not going to go up against President Trump. He's the greatest ally Israel has ever had, and so is the United States, but in particular President Trump. And when Trump asked him, please, to hold off on any military action in the meantime, at the moment, because he's trying to do these negotiations. So that's where we stand right now. Just, I want to add one thing.
Sure.
Yesterday or the day before, I'm confused because my time zone is a little screwed up from coming to New York from Tel Aviv. Trump and Netanyahu had a phone conversation, and after that conversation, the media reported it one way, as though it's the end of the U.S.-Israel relationship. But right afterwards, Netanyahu convened a secret security cabinet meeting. And my belief is that that contrary to what the media, how they're reporting it, that actually Netanyahu and Trump are in lockstep. And that's the reason that Netanyahu called a high-level security cabinet meeting. Because I think there's preparations, perhaps, for an attack. I mean, I don't want to tell the enemy what we're going to do. And luckily, I don't have inside info on that. But this is my assessment.
Yeah, well, I would imagine whether you have inside info or not, I think you have a better inside track, having served both with Netanyahu and as a journalist out of Jerusalem, that you understand things, I think, a little bit better than most of the fake news media in America that's trying to constantly. I just saw a headline I shared with you. There was a headline that said that Puerto Rico is no longer going to have ties with the U.S. They're joining Spain again. The things that the media puts out there are just laughable sometimes. And not to mean it couldn't happen, but it's not going to happen today, and not that way. So with that in mind, there's lots of reports regarding the ceasefire with Hamas. And that they don't do it, they do it. Some people were trying to get food, they say. Then I saw a letter that said, don't come here before 5 a.m. because it's at a military base and it looks like you're ambushing us, that type of thing. What is the story with this controversy, from your opinion?
Okay, so the story is, it is such fake news. And by the way, not only the American press. You think that the Israeli press, I mean, most of it, not all, just like you're not a member of the rest of the press, they are just so progressive, left-wing. You can't trust them at all, and they quote one another, you know. You'll have the Israeli paper in Hebrew writing what? Axios said, or the New York Times. Then the New York Times takes it back from them. It's all this game of telephone.
Wow.
And it's a lot of misinformation and disinformation.
Right.
Now, this situation with the humanitarian aid in Gaza is this. finally, we have a coordinated effort to help the people of Gaza get food that Hamas cannot steal. Up until just very recently, the UN, which is in cahoots with Hamas, was delivering trucks. Hamas was stealing it, though they didn't have to work too hard to steal it, because the UN, as I said,
was delivering
UNRWA,
it for them.
They really are pro-Hamas.
And they've been caught in the past cheering them on.
And employees of
Right.
UNRWA or Hamas operatives, etc. Anyway, so then we now have the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, an American company, with Israeli soldiers guarding it, not distributing the food. Every day, 1 million, I don't know what you'd call it, plates or trays of food have been delivered, and Hamas cannot get it. And why is this really, really important? Because anybody who controls the food, especially in a terrorist enclave like Gaza, is king. And it doesn't matter whether the people of Gaza support Hamas. I mean, they voted for Hamas, etc. And it doesn't matter whether they do or they don't or whatever. But you have to kowtow to the people who are giving you the food.
Clearly, if they're giving you food.
But I will also point out, they never were giving them the food. Hamas was stealing the free food that the UN was providing Gaza and selling it to Gazans at exorbitant prices. And I'm not kidding. A pack of cigarettes for $1,200. I'm not joking.
Wow.
Okay, and you'd wonder, interesting, where did the Gazans get $1,200 to buy cigarettes? I'm just saying, a sack of flour for 100 times the price, etc. They were selling it because that money they were getting, first of all, it's part of their control. Second of all, that money helped them stay in power and keep their terrorist machine going. So now they have severed, a joint Israel-United States operation severed Hamas from the food distribution. And that has really freed up a lot of Gazans, to protest against Hamas openly.
And for the first time ever, I saw a bunch of Palestinians marching in the streets, thanking the Americans, saying a lot of nice things.
Having a heart, saying President Trump, thank you, etc.
Right.
And many more are admitting they want to leave Gaza and they're only too happy. President Trump has this fantasy, it may be a reality, but at the moment it's a fantasy about, turning Gaza into this Riviera on the Mediterranean, but first you empty out. Now, his attackers are saying, you're trying to, exterminate the Palestinians. No. He said, I want them to have a better life, then we'll clean up Gaza, and then anybody who wants to live there can, or something like that. Now, whether it'll happen or not is not the point. The point is that Gazans want to leave. And unfortunately, all those hypocrites in the world, among them the Arab states and the Europeans, don't want to take them in. So, it's all well and good to say, those poor Gazans, but Europe wants them to stay there and suffer. That's basically what they mean by saying don't let him out, right?
Yeah.
So there are very good signs right now. Now, the biggest problem Israel has with the hostages is that we care about every single person. Unlike Hamas, that hides behind its own people, human shields, took all those hostages on October 7th, 2023, and there are still 55 remaining ones. Of those 55, 20 or 23, we're not quite sure at the moment, are alive. The rest are dead, but everyone wants them home for a proper burial. And Israel's being very careful. That's why Hamas doesn't want to release them and keeps upping the ante. Okay, so now give us back the food distribution. Okay, you want them back? Have a ceasefire for 5 years. Basically, they want to stay in power, and this we cannot accept. Cannot.
You heard the remarks from from Ambassador Mike Huckabee. I believe, to paraphrase, he said, "Sure, there can be a Palestinian state. It just can't be right here next to Israel." And I want to get your reaction to that, and moreover, what you think. What do we do with all these people? Because, just as an aside, I saw a video of a border wall, in Egypt. And it had one layer, and then it had another layer, and it had another layer, and it went like 7 layers deep, and with armed guards. And I thought to myself, jokingly, Trump should have hired these guys to build the border wall in the United States. But in reality, what you're saying is true. The neighbors immediately surrounding Gaza aren't looking for them to move into their neighborhood. So what do these people do?
Okay, so on the contrary, it's not just that they're not looking to. Egypt doesn't want a single Palestinian to come through there. They've allowed a few ill children to go to hospitals in Egypt. They don't want them because it's Muslim Brotherhood. Egypt spent all this time trying to eliminate has outlawed the Muslim Brotherhood. So they don't want them. Jordan doesn't want them. They'll topple his regime. One more Palestinian, Jordan has a huge Palestinian population. He doesn't want them. It's all well and good to get on their high horse and say Israel is responsible. That's number one. You asked me about Mike Huckabee. So first of all, I'd like to say we just love Ambassador Huckabee, and I'm not being sarcastic. Really, genuinely love him. I was going to say he's a godsend, but actually Trump sent him to Israel. I know Trump would like to be compared to God. He's tough but gentle. He's sweet but sticks to his guns. He's got this great combination. And what he said two things recently. And one was in response to President Emmanuel Macron of France, attacking Israel and saying that we're committing all kinds of war crimes, et cetera, et cetera. And Ambassador Huckabee said to Macron, and because Macron was going to join this upcoming summit and to recognize, just unilaterally recognize Palestinian statehood. So Ambassador Huckabee said to Macron, really? You want a Palestinian state? Why don't you take part of the French Riviera and give it to the Palestinians? And more recently, what he said was, not in our lifetime, in the United States is not recognizing a Palestinian state. And it might not happen in our lifetime, if it ever does. It might not. And you see, when you ask me what to do with these people, et cetera, the biggest problem with the Palestinians is that their education is to martyrdom, to kill Jews and you go to heaven, go to paradise. These children are raised, now this isn't only in Gaza, it's also in Judea and Samaria, which anti-Israel people call the West Bank, in the Palestinian Authority, which is why also conservatives like me in Israel, we oppose the Palestinian Authority taking control of Gaza as well.
But now the Palestinian Authority and Hamas don't necessarily get along.
Oh, they don't at all. They don't at all because, you see, in 2005, Israel basically yanked every single Jew out of Gaza, okay? They certainly never touched a Palestinian, never pulled any of those out, and that was okay. You just forcibly pulled out the Jews who were peacefully settled near the Gaza border, and they pulled them. I don't mean they, Israel did that. On the grounds that there were so many Hamas suicide bombings, and we were unable to prevent them. So at the time, Prime Minister Ariel Sharon said, okay, that's it, we've got to just get out of Gaza. They called it disengagement, which really meant just withdraw every Israeli, every last Jew from there. And what happened was immediately rockets flying. It's true, the suicide bombings went down a bit. The rest is history. And that was 19 years ago? Whatever. Yeah. Or actually, when in 2005, that's 20 years ago. Yeah. But what happened was the Palestinians had elections, and Hamas, though it's not clear who actually won, it's possible that Fatah, which is the main party of the Palestinian Authority, won, or it was close, and Hamas just began to throw them off the rooftops and kill them, and, it's a bloodlust culture, I'm telling you. And Fatah seems to some people to be more moderate because some of them wear suits and ties. They're not moderate. They just have a different plan of stages of annihilating the Jewish state. They also hate the West. They also, but they're in competition with one another.
Right.
And so we cannot have the Palestinian Authority running Gaza either. What's going to happen, I don't know. I'll just tell you something. It is really, really frustrating. Every year, all the time, Israelis would say, peaceniks, well, then what's the solution? What's the solution? There's a demographic problem. We can't rule over all that. What's the solution? Now, in the Middle East, the solution is you bide your time. Things change. First of all, the demography changed. Do you know that Israel has the highest birth rate of the Western world,
Wow.
and is overtaking the birth rate of Arabs in Israel as well.
Wow.
So in the past, it was always, their birth rate is high. So you sometimes cannot make a policy based on, what's going to happen. That's why when the October 7th massacre happened, on October 8th, already you had the progressives saying, what will be the day after? What will be the day after? Wait, let us first attack the enemy who just succeeded at slaughtering 1,200 people, raping, beheading, burning. I mean, you have to be graphic because I think people have forgotten what happened on that day.
And the other side is equally as graphic, right? They're constantly saying it's ethnic cleansing. And I'm not saying that I'm taking a side. I just think that you have to be fair. Right, you have to be fair in how you're going to call the game, and when you have these people, the terrorists that came and killed people on October 7th, burning babies, slitting throats, raping old ladies, this is horrific, and I understood and I'm not going to say agreed with, but related to the ire of the Prime Minister at that time, because who does that? And when you're in charge, you've got to be responsible for your people and respond in kind. So I think that it's appropriate, and I understand why why Trump is holding his hand at times. I totally get it. I put myself in his shoes, and I think, man, I don't know if you could hold me back. That was a very serious thing that happened. But you mentioned they give some of these people respect because they wear ties and suits. And there's a guy named Al-Jilani who is now named Al-Shara, and he has a suit and tie now. But he was a terrorist before, at least by my standards, right? And I'm going to try and be fair and say, maybe because I'm an American, I call people that I don't agree with terrorists when they kill Americans. Maybe, right? But this is a very interesting deal, right? This former Al-Qaeda leader that's now head of state.
Not only Al-Qaeda, but also ISIS. He was a member of both and switched over, and I can't remember which first and which second, but it had nothing to do with switch in his ideology. It was an internal fight among the terrorists. Now, he was a terrorist. I'm not going to say is, because let's say you want to give someone the benefit of the doubt who says he renounces it. I'm very skeptical because I think it's a ploy for him because he's taking over Syria, and we see that that his forces are going after Druze, going after Christians. There's a lot of chaos in there, and the question is he controlling it? Israel had a rocket recently from Syria, and the answer from our defense minister said, basically to Gilani or Al-Shar, said to him, "You're responsible. Whatever's going on, you gotta rein in your people." Or we'll see if he has changed his spots. I don't see any evidence other than the suit and tie so far. But again, we can talk in a year and let's see.
Right, like you said,
what
time
unfolds.
matters. Because things
It always matters. It always matters. And you always have to be skeptical of somebody who's a radical Islamist because the ideology is so powerful. And also in Islam, even not radical Islam, Islam has certain, I'm not an expert on Islam, but experts have told me they have all kinds of ploys, like things that are called a ceasefire. They're temporary. It's like a truce before you kill each other again. Or there's also, it's legitimate to pull the wool over someone's eyes, to fake him out in order to do what you want in the meantime. Of course, I'm saying that in very, slangy language.
Yes.
But I don't know, and I don't know what he's up to. But I would be I'm sure that the Israeli government is watching him like a hawk.
This show was once the Larry King show before it was the Jim Bohannon show, and before it was my show. And one of Larry's favorite questions was, how does a nice girl like you get involved in a thing like this?
Wow, if I could give you I don't like to lie and I don't like to fake people out. But the question is, how personal can I get about how I ended up in this business? So I'll have to leave out some of the details. But
Sure.
the short answer is, well, how I ended up in Israel was that I was a teenager. I met an Israeli. I thought, oh, I'm in love. I'm going to go to Israel and see how it works out.
And you were born in New York.
Oh yeah, I grew up. I'm American.
Yeah.
And so I went to Israel for a year program at the university, and we broke up. But I fell in love with Israel. It grabbed me. Some Jews go to Israel, and they say, this is so foreign to me. I mean, it's a nice place and all that, but I don't know, the language, and people are rude and noisy, and, it's really very it's Western, but it's also very Middle Eastern.
Yeah.
And a lot of people go and they say, well, it's great, and we like to visit, but I wouldn't want to live there. And others, like me, I just fell in love. I can't explain it, but I felt like everybody looks like me here. Everybody's noisy like me. So I ended up staying and finishing my degree there. And then I got married, I had children. How I got into this profession is probably because it runs in my family. My father was the editor of Commentary magazine for 35 years. Today, my brother is the editor of Commentary magazine. But I really thought that all I want to do is be a housewife and have a lot of babies. So I did have a lot of babies, and I was a housewife. But then I got divorced. And so then I think writing and editing just came naturally to me, and that's how I ended up there. How I ended up working for Prime Minister Netanyahu was that I've been writing for years, defending him and all that, and I ended up working as a speechwriter. But then when the October 7th war broke out, there was many people in that office were switching jobs. We were doing kind of, various all hands on deck kind of thing. And it was a lot of trying to explain to the world what's going on, because it didn't take, we knew it right on October 7th, before when the 250 people had been kidnapped into Gaza and all those rapes and murders and everything. Before we even had a chance to take a breath, we knew that we have 5 minutes of legitimacy before the world attacks us. And in fact, that's what happened. And so there was a whole office set up to answer questions, from CNN, all these hostile reporters saying, before we even launched a ground invasion into Gaza, there was already attacks on us about using excessive force in Gaza. Yeah.
They were ahead of the game.
Oh, yeah. They were at the ready.
Unbelievable. So you're still in the thick of it. You spend most of your time in Israel now.
Oh, I live in Israel. I'm just visiting New York right now.
And is it, I'm visiting Israel soon, and a lot of people have asked me, is it safe? I hear they're at war. What's the answer to that?
Well, it's funny because before the broadcast, I told you, you're used to your own dangers. Yeah. So I come from, missile-torn Israel, and I'm afraid to take the subway in New York City because I think everybody's going to get raped and set on fire in the subway. It is safe for you to go there. For one thing, we now have an early alert. Listen, we've been having a lot of Houthi missiles. That's not so many from Gaza, and the ones here and there, stray rockets from Gaza, are not hitting the center of the country, or Jerusalem, Tel Aviv, Haifa. They're only right near Gaza, the Gaza border. It's the Houthis from Yemen who have been firing these missiles 2,000 kilometers away, something like that. Ballistic missiles, serious ones. Luckily, because they take so long to arrive, we have an early warning system, and at least it gives the 1.5 million Israelis who have to run to bomb shelter at least a few minutes to do it.
Excellent. Now, Ruthie Blum, for people who are enamored by this conversation and love the sound of your voice, how do they hear your podcast, and how do they learn more about the work you're doing?
Okay, so first of all, jns.org. It's Jewish News Syndicate. We have news every day. We're a website with news, columns. I'm a columnist, not a news reporter. And my podcast is called Israel Undiplomatic, which can be heard on Spotify, all the Apple tunes, Spotify, but mainly on YouTube. Israel Undiplomatic.
Israel Undiplomatic with Ruthie Blum. Ruthie, I want to thank you for being here. You are a gentlewoman, a scholar, and a patriot. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Rich.
You
Loved
bet.
having you.
God
I love
bless
being
you.
here.